Wisp Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
This is episode 27 of the FAB podcast on Wisp Sports Radio.
Excuse me.
The FAB podcast is the weekly show brought to you by Females in Athletic Business, for women in the sports business, where we believe that women in sport deserve equal coverage. Welcome to this week's episode. My name is Kristen Ray, and I'm the founder of Females in Athletic Business and one of your hosts of the FAB podcast. Today, we're speaking with Jessica Bryant, event coordinator for Palace Sports and Entertainment, as part of our Young Professional series. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to be starting this series. We're going to talk to a lot of young women who are in the early parts of their careers so we can get an idea of what worked for them right out of school in terms of getting their first jobs and just kind of get an idea of the different journeys that young women are taking in the industry right now. So, Jessica, we like to start out each episode with our guests talking a little bit about their journey into the sports industry. So talk a little bit about maybe what your major was in school, what internships you might have taken on your path to the job that you have, and just kind of, what your process was. Maybe did you have a unique hiring process? How did you find out about the job you have? So talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I have such a unique story and I like telling people about it. So I knew I always wanted to work in sports, but I had no idea how, where to even get started or what I even wanted to do. So I ended up studying sports management at Grand Valley, and able to graduate, we had to have an internship. So naturally, I just looked at Grand Valley's athletic department, and because it's right on campus, super convenient, didn't have to travel anywhere, and I found out about game operations. I had no idea what they did, but I was like, this sounds fun. So I ended up doing that, and because Grand Valley was so successful in all of their sports programs, we were able to host a bunch of championships. So we ended up hosting the NCAA Division II National Championship for track and field and golf. So right off the bat, I was able to get a bunch of experience while I was still in college. But that wasn't enough experience for me to get a full-time job with the professional sports team. So I ended up going into grad school to get my MBA in management. So while I was in school, I actually had a bunch of other internships and opportunities to where I was a supervisor for safe management at Ford Field. I was also interning at the University of Detroit Mercy for game operations and facilities. And at that same time, I was also one of the directors for the Detroit Tigers Hometown Championship Tournament. And during that time, I was able to work for the Detroit Lions as a marketing intern during their training camp. And I was also a coach for softball at one of the old high schools. So I ended up actually getting a bunch of experience all at the same time. So I was able to stack my resume pretty fast.
Well, what I was going to say is we haven't had, I don't know if we've heard too many stories like yours already where you're doing so many things at once. We've definitely heard from a lot of girls who were doing their master's program at the same time that they're working full time, at the same time maybe they're volunteering. That is a lot that you were doing at the same time. And I think part of that message would be that you didn't stop looking for opportunities. And when they came to you, you didn't say no, even when you had a ton on your plate. And so I think that sounds like maybe how your success story started, right?
Exactly. That's actually one of the main points that I tell people is taking on as much responsibility as I could and not enabling myself to say no. I accepted every opportunity that I could. And that's how I gained so much experience so early on. But it's crazy because that's not even where, that's just the beginning. That was still in grad school. So as soon as I ended grad school, Palace Sports and Entertainment actually reached out for an assistantship. So I worked in guest services and security, but I saw the event coordinators and I was like, well, I think it's pretty cool what they do. So I reached out and I was able to shadow one of them, but they didn't have a full-time job open. So I ended up going to work for SMG in Grand Rapids, and SMG is one of the biggest venue management companies in the world. So I knew at that point that would lead me somewhere that I wanted to be whether it would be at some major arena overseas or something crazy, but I actually ended up at a convention center. So I'm like, well, this isn't really what I wanted. So I reached out to the event manager at the arena out there, and I was able to cover some hockey games and shadow the manager on duty whenever I could. So that's kind of how I kept my foot in the door in sports, along with volunteering. And then I actually ended up getting the event coordinator job. Once they opened up a position back at the Palace, they reached out and I was able to get that job, and I'm where I'm at today.
I also like the part of your message about you keep saying, I reached out, I reached out, I reached out. So it wasn't, you weren't just waiting to scroll up on a job opening on, one of the standard websites. You weren't just waiting for someone to come to you. And even when they said, sorry, we don't have a job opening available, you did one of the things that I think people are so underexposed to, which is job shadowing. If someone's willing to let you job shadow them one day a week, one day a month, one time a season, absolutely take them up on it, because not only are they going to see that you're a hard worker and that you're willing to help them without pay, or you're willing to learn something without having to learn it. You're gonna stick in their mind when the time comes for a job opening. And even if you don't get the job out of the job shadow, you get the experience out of the job shadow. And I think not enough people do job shadows, and not enough people put their job shadows on their resume. Putting that on there is showing your initiative and showing your willingness to learn. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, if you have interest in something, if you have an internship that you're not quite, interested or, and if it's not exciting to you, you can reach out to somebody, and I'm sure somebody else in that department will be willing to help you out, and you can find something that you actually like to do.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in an internship in one part of the industry or one part of the company, and it's not the ideal one, who's to say on your off day you can't job shadow someone in a different department? People are going to love that about you, and it's only going to make you more well-rounded. So tell us a little bit about what a day in your career, a day in your life at work looks like.
Long days, very long. So we have office days and we have event days. So on an office day, I'm usually just collecting information from the client and then distributing that to other departments. So that information could be the event schedule, the setup of certain rooms and tables and chairs around the concourse, and then setting up VIP parties. And then on the event day is making sure that everything that we had talked about beforehand is in place, making sure everything is clean, making sure everything is where it's supposed to be, and then going over with the client all the details for the rest of that day, and then tackling any issues that come up with that. So I'm like the back of house, backstage production manager. And so I work with the front of house manager to make sure that we can open up the venue for guests at the proper time and making sure that everything is good to go before we even open doors.
I work at a sports arena for my job, so I understand how not only do most of these arenas put on sports events for their home team, but they also put on sometimes their corporate events. Sometimes it's a big company, having their annual convention or their staff appreciation event. But sometimes it's also an entertainment group, like a concert or something like that. So talk a little bit about, when you talk about my clients, who are your average clients?
Yeah, so with me currently, I do more work with the concerts and entertainment side of things. So I work very closely with Live Nation. And then, so actually I have a client coming up this weekend or next weekend, and it's actually a walk. So she's at one of our concert venues, but she's doing a walk around the venue to raise awareness for cancer. So things like that kind of come up, but mostly we're doing live entertainment and concerts. So I work with Live Nation and the promoters, and then also the tour managers, production managers, and management of the tours, like really big tours too. My next show is actually coming up. We have 13,000 people, actually 14,000 people sold out. So I'm really looking forward to that. It'll be an exciting show.
Yeah, sounds like it. So how big is the events team that you work with every day? And what other departments within Palace Sports and Entertainment are you working with on a daily basis? What other roles do you interact with every day?
Absolutely. So we actually interact with everybody essentially, except for like the sales department. So I literally have hands in with every single department. On my team, we have 7 people. We operate 8 venues, so we need a big team of people in order to have a good work-life balance, or else we probably drive ourselves crazy because we work. So we have a lot of events almost every day. So, and I worked with the box office. We work with booking, operations, housekeeping, maintenance, parking, security, guest services, accounting, and public relations. Those are people I actually interact with on a daily basis.
Wow. Okay. So it's very all encompassing. I imagine that you're getting a taste for all of the different sides of the event industry. Is there another side of it that has piqued your interest throughout some of this work?
You know, it's crazy actually. Because I came up in operations, I was able to see a lot of that too. And that's what attracted me to it, was being able to interact with so many people. And that's what I like the most about it. Everybody else, I do not envy their work. That's why I got out of guest services. I do not envy that work. I really like being able to coordinate with everybody in the office. It's really fun to me, and you get to talk with everybody. And like you said, you get to see what other people do. And I realize that I like what I do.
Well, that's amazing, because sometimes it's just as valuable to realize something you don't want to do than hit the jackpot with, oh, this is exactly what I want to do. Sometimes it's just as valuable to realize, oh, now I know that's not what I want to do. So I think that's a good message too. But so we're highlighting the accomplishments of young women in our industry with this series of episodes. So shine some light on some of the parts of the job that maybe have been a little easier being so fresh out of school, and maybe are there some parts of it that have been a little more difficult because of your age? How have you interacted with maybe the more senior members of your team? Have you found it to be a tough generational gap communicatively, or have you found that things have been pretty smooth based on how well you've educated yourself specifically for these jobs?
Right. So with it being difficult, like you said, the generational gap, coming in as a young woman, especially a young woman of color, you have to gain respect and you have to prove yourself and prove that you know what you're doing. So it took a little while, and it took a little while because a lot of people have to come to me. I make the decisions and I call the shots. So it was hard for a couple of people at some of the venues to realize that I was the go-to person. I actually got referred to as one of my coworkers' assistants. So that was kind of interesting. That was kind of something I had to work over. And I was like, oh, no, I'm the manager. But, you know, and even with some of the tours, they're looking for somebody to report to. And I'm like, nope, it's me, you know, this young little girl right here. I'm the person you go to. So that's the one thing, because right off the bat, they see me and they see that I'm young. But then they realize by the end of the day that I do know what I'm doing. So that's just something that I'm going to have to face with for a little while. But once you get over that hump and they respect your hustle, then you're good to go. But then I would say one of the good things of being young and coming fresh out of the school is that single with no kids. So I was able to, that's why I had all those jobs. I had a lot of time on my hands. So I had time to work. And that's why I was able to accept so many tasks and responsibilities, because I was readily available, rather than some of my coworkers had families and, you know, activities outside of work to where they couldn't do it and I could pick up their work. So that is actually what kind of helped me. So there is some good things and there's some bad things, but, you know, comes with it.
I wrote down this question and I thought of all the things you might say, and I never thought of the advantage of basically, you know, like stacking your career experience right now before you have kids and before you get married. But I did it too. You know, and I recently married. I'm 7.5 months pregnant, and I'm thinking right now of all the. I'm having some anxiety thinking about maternity leave. I'm having anxiety thinking about what I might miss at work and how I might fall behind. And so I think that was a wonderful thing that you brought up, because if you want to have a family and those are the things that you want for yourself eventually, not all of us do. Now, yeah, when you're right out of school, that would be an amazing time to just not only pave the way for yourself, but get as much experience in a little short period of time as possible, so that when you have to go back to work, or when when you're starting that family, that you're not wishing you had more experience to compete with maybe the younger girls that are coming in at that time. So that was really well thought out, especially ahead of time on your part. So I did some research. I think I did pretty good research, and I noticed that you did and we talked about it early on in the episode, you did a fair amount of sports industry related volunteering during your master's work. And we talked about how much you put on your plate at one time, which I think was really a good idea. But talk about the importance of the volunteer opportunities specifically in terms of the opportunities for networking and getting experience that it provides. And maybe talk about how much you would advise younger women to do that. I don't see a lot of younger women going in that direction. I get a lot of questions about, what do you think I should do this summer? I can't find an internship. And when I throw volunteer work out there, they don't always kind of seem as open-minded, or maybe even like believe me that it's worth it. So talk a little bit about why you think it's worth it, and why it was so valuable for you.
Absolutely. I cannot express enough how important volunteering has put me in the position that I am now. Actually, it's not even, I didn't even mention it earlier, but the reason that I got my job is because I volunteered for the NCAA Division I men's basketball tournament at Little Caesars Arena. So I was actually interviewing for a position before I got down there. And while I was working the tournament is where I met up with the supervisor that hired me into the position I am now. So because I was down there working that tournament, and he saw me and he saw that how willing I was to get back into that arena, is the reason that I got hired. So I cannot express enough how important it is to keep your face in the sports industry, no matter what you're doing, no matter even what the volunteer position is. People notice that you are willing to work and that you're willing to be in the sports industry. I cannot express that enough.
Well, and it just seems like it was so impactful to your experience. And how did you find out about some of those opportunities? Because I think that's the other barrier maybe to people wanting to volunteer. How did you find such valuable experiences that were so relevant to what you wanted to do? Where did you find out about them? Were there websites? Was it through contacts?
Absolutely. So definitely through contacts. I keep in contact with all of my former internship supervisors and all of my former employers. So anytime they need help, they know I'm the person to call, and they'll know I'll come and help out. But then also, once I sign up for an event, they send out volunteer newsletters. So I get a lot of newsletters that come in. And even when I was in college, as soon as I signed up for something, they would send out emails almost monthly. And there's opportunities. There's 5Ks out there. There's championships. There's a ton of opportunities out there. And so, I mean, different newsletters. As soon as you go to one, those volunteer organizers are looking for volunteers for other events as well. So just keeping in touch with those people is key.
Oh, okay. So that's a good idea. So basically, once you got into one event, they kind of knew how readily available you might make yourself, and they took advantage of that. No, but that's a good piece of advice. And I know from a little bit of my experience, I'll add that sports commissions in your areas are always looking for volunteers. And we did an episode a couple weeks ago on sports commissions and what their job is, because I know it's not always something that, women who are working in sports or want to work in sports might not be familiar with what a sports commission's job is. But most big cities or regions have a sports commissioner or a sports authority whose job it is to bring sports events into the area. Detroit has one, Lansing has one, and most of the big cities around the country have one. They're often looking for volunteers to help with whatever sports industry events they might be hosting in the city, because they're trying to make the most money they can for the city off of these events. So having help that is free is a huge part of their business. So just Googling the nearest sports commissioner, sports authority near you, if you're looking for volunteer experience, is a great way to start. So I would try that too if you're trying to build your volunteer experience for your resume. So many people, young people, especially young women, come to me with frustrations about, like, I think we talked about it, finding work in our industry after college. The exact job they're looking for isn't open, or maybe they've been offered a job at their dream company, but it's a very low paying, start out grunt job. What advice do you have for them? And why do you think what you did worked versus what maybe some other young women are doing or not doing? And how did you end up with the job that you got versus some of these girls who seem to be struggling so much? What do you see the difference, and what advice do you have?
So to your point with the grunt jobs and the low paying, I went through all of those jobs. So I had to put in the work to get to where I am and to get a decent pay, even with the master's degree. It's still not obviously what I wanted. Obviously, we all feel that we deserve more, but you have to put in the work. So I can't come in as a 23-year-old to my first job out of an internship expecting, you know, 60K. Like it doesn't work like that. You do have to put in the work. And yes, it's frustrating. But all of this happened within a year. So I put in all these internships, I put in part-time jobs, and I did the grunt work as an event coordinator, only making so much money that, I got the position to where I am now. So it may not happen overnight, but it will happen. I understand that not everybody has that ability to accept a job that will only pay them so much. But it's very frustrating. But all I can say is put in the work. Always, always show your employer that you're willing to work hard. Your work ethic will speak for itself.
Great message. I think it's a constant message that we're getting from our guests on this show. But it's good to hear that it's coming from everyone. It's a very consistent message. So hopefully our listeners who are struggling are picking up on that message. Let me ask you one more question before I let you go that just popped in my head when you said that. I get a lot. What do I do, Kristen? Should I get my master's in sports administration or sports business marketing or something like that? Or should I just go take one of those grunt jobs and load up on the experience? And yes, there's definitely sometimes the opportunity to do both at the same time. But if we are in a situation where we have to pick between, either for monetary reasons or whatever, pick between getting that master's degree and getting experience, what would you recommend? I know you did it one way, you got your master's, but what have you seen maybe from your peers? Do you think your master's was worth it in the long run for your compensation or for your hiring process? What do you think about that?
So it's interesting that you bring that up because I do feel that right now my master's is not being put to work, more so because I got an MBA in management and not really in sports admin like most people in our industry. But I will say that I feel like having it on my resume caught a lot more attention than it did before I got my master's. But the experience is what is getting me the job. So it's kind of twofold. Like it looks good on the resume, and I'm sure it will definitely get put to work when I get into those higher management positions. But right now, it attracted the people, but my experience is what got me the job. So, but I would say the experience is probably what's going to land you the job, more so because that's what people are relying on. They're not necessarily looking at your education. They're like, yeah, that's nice and all, but I need you to make sure that these people put 150 chairs out in the next 10 minutes, So,
Okay. Got it. Well, I think that's interesting because I think more people I ask that question to are kind of leaning toward more experience than if you had to pick than the masters. But I think it's interesting that you mentioned that one thing kind of attracted people and one thing solidified people. So I think that's an interesting message. We haven't heard quite that answer yet. But Jessica, thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate your time because you had such a unique way of thinking about things and such a unique story. If our listeners out there want to get in touch with you, maybe get some advice from you, is there a way that you wouldn't mind them contacting you?
Absolutely. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn, Jessica D. Bryant. I am always willing and open to talk to people and bring them in, bring them around, shadow. I do tons of events. So if they want to come out and see what I do, I'm completely open to it. I'm always open to mentorships and connecting people. If I know that they're interested in a certain department, I can always connect them with somebody. I've done a lot of work with people all over the city and at every venue. So I'm definitely open to people reaching out. Like I said, on LinkedIn, Jessica D. Bryant. Just go ahead and send me a message and I'll love to connect.
Oh, well, thank you so much for A, for being here today, and B, for being so open, because that is a huge part about what we're trying to do with this organization, this podcast, but also just getting more young women who are qualified into this industry means that more women already in the industry have to be ready, willing, and able to help. So thank you so much for being so willing and for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it was totally our pleasure, and we can't wait to keep in touch and see what you're up to.
Conversations from the world of women's sports. This is Wisp Sports Radio.
Wisp Sports Radio can be found on any podcast app. Follow Wisp Sports on social media at Wisp Sports. Please give us a 5-star review on iTunes to help promote coverage of women in sport. Thanks for listening and supporting women in sport everywhere. To follow Females in Athletic Business or this podcast, use @FabSportsOrg on social media. The FAB podcast is a co-production of Females in Athletic Business and Wisp Sports. Check Females in Athletic Business out at www.fabsportsorg.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back next week.